All right, I'm live here on Facebook, and I'm very excited to be doing this broadcast. It's coming from just a place of gratitude and appreciation for really all of you, everyone involved in Gail's process of transitioning from life to afterlife. And I mean, as many of you know, there really is no death. And I've learned that at a profoundly deep level with Gail's guidance in afterwards, after her passing, through these series of spiritual experiences that I've had with her. And for those of you that have watched the other videos, you know that she came to me in spirit the morning before she passed, and she's been with me ever since. And her and I had many conversations prior to her passing and being hospitalized, and even while she was in the hospital, about her and I always being together, whether it's in the physical world or not, and about her and I, or that she would always be able to communicate with me. And so, of course, I had no idea that it would be so direct. I've had spiritual experiences in the past and familiarity with things like channeling and mediumship, but never something so direct, never something so profound. And so, first and foremost, for all of you, whether you made a donation, had her in your thoughts and prayers, or you just, saw the Facebook post and had any, positive energy to give out, thank you. Really, it made her transition that much better. Um, and she's in a great place. She's doing extraordinarily well. I mean, this is all me and my perception and my movie here, but from my perspective and from what she's shown me, heaven is a real place, and it's a magnificent place. So that's the first order of conversation here. And she actually inspired me, and I was on track to doing this prior to things really accelerating with her cancer. But I've put together this course called Spirituality for Beginners, and she really took it to the next level with me, particularly the conversations and communications that she's had with me over the past couple of weeks almost. It's almost 2 weeks of her anniversary of passing. So this is a knockout course. It's going to be absolutely phenomenal in terms of everything I've learned over my years of spiritual growth and insight and experience over more than 10 years. And of course, in the last 2 years, it's really been accelerated to a whole new level. Being with Gail, first and foremost, 5 years ago, meeting her, that certainly put me on an accelerated path. And then with her breast cancer in the fall of 2018, that again put me on a whole new level. And then, of course, with the terminal cancer earlier this year, that has deeply accelerated my growth and understanding from a human perspective and also from a spiritual perspective. So what I'm going to be sharing here, just noting the time, it's 5:34 p.m. Eastern time. And on April 30th, 4:30. And Gail's magic number is 43. And she uses that number quite a bit to just as a synchronicity so that I know I'm on the right track and I know she's there. Of course, 34 is just 43 backwards, and the date being 4:30, it's 43 is right there. So Gail's here right now, which is great. And this is just the way I live my life. I've been on this track for several years, and it's just at a whole new level of synchronicity, paying attention to the signs. Gail's already guided me to, I'll be receiving some mentorship from a medium, a psychic medium, as to hone my skill set in communicating with her and with spirit to a whole new level. Someone who's seasoned and been doing it for decades. I'll be working with, and potentially other masters of energy, and really people who are tapped into the spiritual realm. So I've been blessed, thanks entirely to Gail guiding me to these people through spirit, just pointing them out to me. And in private conversations, I'll be happy to share more details around how that works. But that's really what this course is going to be all about. It's called Spirituality for Beginners. And before I really get into the contents of the course, I want to share my story and how I kind of came to be where I'm at. So I'm going to be sharing my screen here briefly. This may be 10 to 15 minutes, but it's going to be very intriguing. And really just to give a background as to why am I qualified, for one thing. And on top of that, why would you want to participate in something like this? So this is an invitation, first and foremost, an invitation into my world, an invitation into how I've been living for several years in a journey that really started at the beginning of my life. As I understand things now, I mean, this life that we're in, it's set up from the beginning. It's kind of like a movie script. And we're the director. We choose our role. We choose all the characters in our play. Gail's shown me this from a very heightened perspective. Of course, I've spent a lot of time studying these types of ideas, but it's a profound difference between having it in your mind as a concept and being shown it directly and having a direct spiritual experience with it. So that is the first idea here, is invitation into my world. And then, of course, the invitation into enlightening your world or bringing it to the next level of awareness through the course. I'll be sharing more details about that as we go. And just give me one moment. So here we are, an invitation. So the first, where it all begins. And I'll go through 10 of the most meaningful points in my life that really shaped the person I am today and really helped shape this course. And I'm sure a lot of these things will resonate with you on some level. So at age 3, I was born into a, I would say, conflicting situation between my parents, my mom and my dad. They were a lot like oil and water in their personalities. And, now from my perspective, there's no judgment there. I've learned a lot about what it was the way it was. And again, it's just a setup. It's just a story. But at age 3, they divorced. And that, my world was already kind of split in a lot of ways between the thinking of my mom and the thinking of my dad. But this just took it to another level of separation, as you might call it. And that had a profound experience for me, because then I was living full-time with my mom and fully under her parenting and her guidance. And absolutely, she did her best. She was coming from a household that wasn't the most loving or compassionate, and it was split in its thinking. So she herself didn't have a great foundation for relationships or parenting, because she wasn't nurtured in the way that would be ideal. So she was bringing that into motherhood, and there was also a lot of stress. There was stress when I was born. There was stress after my parents separated, and so I grew up in a formula of stress. I was just raised that way, and I was born into that. And while there was a lot of happy times for me, and I know certainly when my mother was pregnant with me, she was very happy. But the stress, overrode a lot of that, and activated a lot of anger and frustration in her, and even a volatility, even, kind of hair triggers where, she would kind of snap. And it was all due to the environment that she had created and that I created for myself, despite being at a young age. Like I said, this is all orchestrated from a higher realm, and it's meant to be the way it is. And nobody's a victim from my perspective, certainly not myself. despite perhaps feeling that way at the time. So it was a challenge growing up with her, and I lived a lot in social isolation. She didn't have a lot of friends. She spent a fair amount of time with close family, um, but that was, to a degree, somewhat limited. Fortunately, I did spend a lot of time with my grandparents, her parents, and my aunt, her sister, and that had a very profound effect on my upbringing. And my aunt, in particular, had a deep spiritual awareness, and I learned a lot of that from her, even in the early days before I was conscious of any of this. So that's really how it all began, with this split. And quickly, my dad went on to uh, be with another woman, and a few years after, he got remarried, and that caused a further split. And really, here around age 6 is where I had probably one of the more meaningful moments, as I was becoming more conscious of my environment, and just more aware in my thinking, and what I wanted and what I didn't want. I realized that I really just wanted to spend time with my dad. I didn't want his wife, as part of my life. At that time, I was young. I didn't have my dad very often. I'd see him every couple of weekends, and even that was sometimes limited. So I always had this desire just to be with him and to spend time with him, and that was limited. It was limited on both sides. It was limited on my dad's side, and it was also limited on my mom's side, because this was not an amicable separation. So they did not have really any communication, very limited in scope, and therefore I was caught in the middle. Again, all by design, all part of the plan for my spiritual growth and awareness. But that's the situation, and it was a challenge for me. And I grew up with a lot of naivete, a lot of just kind of ignorance or unawareness about things, simply because I didn't have both sides of parenting, and I had a lot of kind of isolation. My mom, in a lot of ways too, was possessive of me, and that caused further stress. And again, to no detriment of her, that was her programming, her upbringing, and both my parents I love dearly, and I've made peace with all of this as I'm sharing the story. So there's really no resentments at this point, which is something that took many years, even until recent. I've had some amazing breakthroughs with that. But there was this one particular point in my life where I was with my dad, and I'd drawn him this picture of him and I. And in this picture, I'd given myself, originally I drew it with tears. I was crying in the picture, and I was going to give it to him. And the reason I was crying in the picture is because I just wanted to spend time with him. I didn't want other people involved. I didn't want his new girlfriend and wife with her kids. I didn't want that. I just wanted him. I just wanted my dad. But I was scared to tell him this. My mom did her best to communicate. It really didn't amount to that much, just due to the strain in their communication. I always felt like if I actually told him how I feel, it's going to hurt him so bad, or he'll leave me, or I was just scared of what his response would be. There was a lot of things going on in my mind at this time. And, a lot of that rooted back to how my mom communicated with my dad. She had a fear of communicating with him. There was a lot of criticism from my dad towards her in the stories that my mom's told me. So there was just this, environment of conflict in terms of the communication styles and the words that were spoken, and criticism, sarcasm, blaming, all those heavier, denser projections and emotions and thoughts. So at age 6, I was going to give him this, and I had worked up the courage to give him this drawing. And at the last minute, when he came to pick me up on a Friday evening, I turned the tears on my cheeks, I turned them into cheeks. I made them round cheeks. And when I gave him the picture, the drawing, I emphasized to him that those were my cheeks, just to really cover up my truth, to really isolate myself and my emotions, out of fear, out of pure fear, and just how I learned in my environment. That's how I learned to deal with these things. So that was age 6. And then that pretty well locked in how I was going to be with him for many, many years. It's only until the recent year or two where I've really started to unlock greater depths of communication with my dad, who's a great man, very successful in business, done his absolute best as a human being. And, from the standpoint that I set this whole thing up as my movie, he's been perfect. He's been the perfect father for me. And God knows there's a lot of cases out there with parents that are nowhere near as supportive and doing things far beyond the scope of what I've experienced. So I'm not invalidating any of his great abilities, along with my mother. Great people at their core, and they just didn't know themselves. That's fundamentally when I talk to them about this situation and my upbringing. The ultimate thing is they didn't truly know what they wanted at the time, and didn't know how to communicate that, didn't know how to harmoniously transfer what they were doing to a new environment. So there was conflict. So age 17, I lived this way, for the next 10, 11 years of my life. And at age 17, I discovered cannabis for the first time. I'd been living with a lot of social anxiety, very limited friends, limited to 1 or 2 kind of close friends, and quiet, but also behind the scenes, a lot of anger, a lot of frustration, just volatile anger, destructive, even breaking my possessions as a teenager, and before that, and even struggling for years after with the anger and the rage. But at age 17, it finally kind of cooled off, and it was really thanks to cannabis. Now, this was just done among my peers, and finally, for the first time, I was fitting in, which was amazing. I'd never felt so good. I'd never felt so confident. I'd never felt so popular, and like I fit in, and all these great things. I was one of the cool kids for the first time in my life. And it was great. I felt a great sense of freedom, and I was really kind of understanding myself in a deeper way than ever before. However, part of that journey for me was to stop going to school. I was in grade 11 at the time. I believe it was my first or second semester of grade 11. And I stopped going to school. I'd stay home and I'd play video games all day, just as a sense of taking a break. I had really good grades up until grade 10, but it was all amalgamated out of fear. I had good grades and I did my homework and all that stuff because I was scared of the consequences as if I didn't, or if I did not. So basically, I lived everything out of fear of what might happen if I don't do this. And I was always away from motivated. I was always going away from a perceived negative consequence my whole life up until this age. So I finally had this breakthrough where it was like, wow, I feel free. I don't have to listen to the rules, that rebellious age. And I stayed home. I played Grand Theft Auto quite a bit and other kind of violent-based video games, which shaped a lot of my life in the preceding years, which I'll explain shortly. But this, staying home, not going to school, caused a huge conflict with my mom. And it just, took her volatility and anger and stress to the next level. And eventually we had this huge fight. And basically, it was the height of any argument we've ever had. And it was basically decided that I couldn't continue living with her, that I had to go live with my dad. And I've been living with her, full time up until age 17. And I'd only been going to visit my dad every 2 weekends. So this was definitely going to be a totally new change. And it was. I went partway through the semester of grade 11, and my dad wanted me to stay in school rather than take any time off. But I couldn't get into a regular high school at the time simply because it was partway through the semester. They wouldn't let me in. So he put me in a alternative school, high school. And this alternative school, by the way, I grew up in the Toronto, Canada area, first on the west side of Toronto, the West End. And then I was moved to the East End where my dad was living. And this alternative school, it had mostly, I was 17 at the time, and it had mostly 18 and 19-year-old young men who all had some kind of criminal record or involvement, or they'd been kicked out of school, things like that. So that became my core group. And one gentleman in particular really embraced me. You know, for whatever reason, didn't make sense at the time, but obviously, you know, soul agreements, and I have clarity on all that now. But I got into drinking and smoking on a regular basis. You know, this group, they drink certainly every weekend. Eventually, that led to me drinking every day and smoking about a pack of cigarettes every day. So by the time I was in my late teens and early 20s, around the height of it was probably age 19 and even age 20, and then it continued. And I got involved in a lot of different elements, to say the least, that were not conducive to you know, being a productive citizen. This one gentleman got me involved in elements of financial crime, and you know, I was just following his coattails, looking for a belonging. My ultimate role model before meeting this one gentleman, who was a couple years older than me, was Tony Soprano. I was a huge fan of The Sopranos, and just the way my mind works, the way many of our minds work, but certainly me, I would be very gullible and kind of absorb everything that I was watching with this Tony Soprano figure. And while most people around that age are getting motivated about business and would take on someone like Tony Robbins as their role model, mine was Tony Soprano. And it was just a polarity shift. I felt like such a victim my whole life. I shifted over to, now instead of being a victim, can I be the victimizer? Can I take advantage of people before they take advantage of me? That was my thinking. Simply out of a wanting of safety. I felt unsafe in the world, and I felt like I better take advantage of others before they take advantage of me. So I lived that way, had 2 or 3 really close run-ins with the police, but thank God, you know, I learned quickly that that's not the road I wanted to go down, and you know, it worked out. It worked out. You know, I was very fortunate. I didn't have to get too involved in that lifestyle in order to realize that it was not for me in any way, shape, or form. So that straightened me out. And I eventually broke free of that crowd. However, I did maintain the behaviors for quite some time in terms of the drinking and the smoking. And we go to, you know, this gentleman, he introduced me to going to bars, going to strip clubs, you know, the whole lifestyle, everything you see, not everything you see, but, you know, things you see in those movies. Fortunately, there was never really any violence involved. You know, and, you know, looking back on it, that was absolutely a blessing. But, you know, I definitely looking for love in the wrong places. That was a part of my journey. And on an evening, early morning actually, in September 2010, I was age 23. I was in my 4th year of university studying, ironically, criminology. And I was on my way home. I'd been out drinking, and I was on my way home from near the Toronto airport, headed eastbound on the freeway. And I was really pushing my life to its limits. I was in a state of mind where I felt invincible, but in a really arrogant sense. And simultaneously, I had this kind of dualistic thought that my luck might run out at some point. Despite me feeling so invincible, my luck could run out. And I was having this thought on my way home. And very closely after having that conflicting thought, I was speeding. It was like 2 in the morning. You know, I had alcohol in my system. I've been drinking every day, so you know, I've been functioning with alcohol in my system on a daily basis for probably close to a year or more. But I was, you know, driving home, 2 a.m., ready to start my 4th year, my first day of my 4th year of university, probably about 6 hours, in 6 hours time, 8 a.m. This is in September 2010. And I see a police cruiser on the same direction as me on the freeway. And I'm the only car on the road, so I know for certain he's seen me. And as I'm going, he inevitably pulls me over. And I know in my mind that if I get any kind of ticket or anything of that nature, um, that my potential career in the criminology field, which would have been in some form of law enforcement or security, it would have been severely limited, if not entirely impossible, to work in that field. So I knew in the back of my mind that I had to somehow, well, what I thought was to talk my way out of this. And I lived in a world of fantasy. I truly believed that I could talk my way out of this somehow, and maybe that can happen. I don't know, but that certainly wasn't the case in this scenario. So this officer walks up to my vehicle. I was driving a Honda Civic at the time, and rolled down my window, and he just kind of barks at me immediately. He says, "Get out of the car. I can smell alcohol." And so in my mind, I'm like, okay, well, obviously there's not a lot of room for negotiation here. Um, so I, got to tell him what I got to tell him. And what I told him was, I'm not getting out of the car. And, and I lit a cigarette right there, seated in my vehicle, the window down. I lit a cigarette and kind of acted like I was ignoring him. And needless to say, him and I became best friends instantly. Um, so he called for backup, and then he came back to the vehicle and he just yelled at me to get out of the vehicle. He attempted to open my door, and the door was locked. And he reached in through the open window, and he grabbed me by my collar, and he tried to start pulling me out of the vehicle. And when he was pulling me out, he was physically pulling me out. I grabbed his wrist to stop myself from being pulled out of the car. And the moment I touched him, he began striking me in the face, just punches. And I had glasses on at that time as well, and full on assault. I was just protecting my face, and then he opened the door and crawled in. And to continue this, he was a pretty big guy, maybe 5'10", 240 pounds, definitely looked like a bruiser, and pulled me out of the vehicle. And I was on the freeway, at the side of the freeway, looking, facing up at the sky, laid out. At this point, the backup had arrived, so there were blue and red lights everywhere, just like you see on the screen. And the police surrounded me. They were out of their cruisers and I was surrounded by about 5 or 6 of them. And I couldn't see it in my glasses. And this assault continued. I got kicked in the face. I got kicked in the ribs. I had a big boot mark on my face for several weeks after the event. And I had a hairline fracture in my nose. Fortunately, my injuries healed and there was no permanent damage, but this was a full-on police assault. I was arrested. One of the officers there took my car keys, and we were at an overpass of a forest. So on the outside of the freeway, there was a forest down below, and one of the officers took my car keys and threw them over the bridge into the overpass with the forest. So they were like gone. The car keys were gone. House keys were on there. Everything. So I mean, just a crazy, crazy experience. Now, I'm not speaking at this from the point of being a victim. This was my setup. This was my life story. This was what I needed as my wake-up call at the time, and it was indeed a wake-up call. My driving privileges. I mean, I got several charges, driving charges, criminal charges, things like that, that I dealt with, through a court process, a 1.5 year long court process, approximately. And fortunately, my dad was really able to assist me with getting a lawyer, and a great lawyer, and eventually the whole thing got dropped and thrown out. Now, I would go to court every month, and we'd be given what's called disclosure, which is like information pertaining to the incident. And the police were trickling it out. Obviously they know how the system works, so they were just giving just enough. And fortunately, my dad had taken photos of me, and there was also video evidence at the police station of the injuries. So we had evidence of the assault. And the one thing that we really needed was the medical report to demonstrate, just to see what was on there, obviously, as a piece of evidence. That was withheld until the very final piece of disclosure was given, approximately 1.5 years after the incident. And it specifically said on that report that there were no injuries to me at the scene. So, thank goodness for having the lawyer. And that was obviously brought to court, and we showed them the evidence of the extreme injuries that were present, and the whole thing got thrown out, every charge. So to this day, I have a clean record, and I consider myself extraordinarily lucky. And people ask me, did you pursue it? Did you sue them, or did you charge them, or whatever? And I said no. I mean, certainly at the time, I wasn't in a place mentally to want to do anything like that. It was enough stress dealing with this as a young man, and the stress it caused for my dad and my family, particularly, just the stress and the challenge and the extra work for my dad as well. So we decided that it wasn't a great idea to move forward with that. And again, I knew I wasn't doing the right things, at that time. And it was the wake up call. I realized afterwards, I'd been speeding, been drinking. I got lucky. And of course, no such thing as luck, really. It's all part of the script. It's all part of the movie. But I counted my blessings that, hey, I'm going to take it as a learning experience and move on. And so I did. And during this time, I particularly during the court process, I just got into a lot of spiritual knowledge and started reading about forgiveness and positive thinking and things of that nature. And that really kept me through, it really built my faith to realize that everything is happening for a reason, and that, a positive outcome is possible here. And I was, blessed with the outcome that did come. A Course in Miracles was one of the most profound spiritual studies that I had, particularly in my early days. And I went through, for those of you that, might be familiar or unfamiliar with this, it's about the size of a Bible. And it's comprised of a lot of theory and concepts, and it also has a practical workbook application, which I've been through twice. And it's a minimum of a year-long process to go through that workbook, and I went through it twice. And it really helps train your mind, train your thinking. And the purpose of it really is to get out of your head, out of your thoughts, and out of the ego, and into your heart, into heaven, into the idea of source power, into a spiritual experience. And it's quite a process to get from A to B with A Course in Miracles, but that's what I was called to at the time. And it certainly resonated with me in terms of the intellectual capacity. I've always been a pretty intelligent person, and the way this course spoke to me, also through the books that preceded it, one book by a gentleman named Gary Renard, Disappearance of the Universe, that was a pivotal book. So thank you, Gary, for authoring that. And that helped me a lot on the journey. And eventually by 2012, the entire court thing was over with. By the summer of 2012, I started listening to audio programs as well. And that started getting me into a good mindset. And I do that on a daily basis. And that eventually led me to my first mastermind group at age 25. This was in September of 2012. And really a full 2 years after that incident with the police. And I'd done a complete 180. I was now involved with like-minded people, or at least people who had goals in mind. They were positive thinking. They were more or less there to support one another. They were all into personal development and professional development. And it was a whole new world for me. I had no idea this realm existed. And for the first time, I felt like I found my crowd. I found my people. I found my tribe. And it was extraordinary, an extraordinary experience. So that continued. I got involved in mentorship, in coaching. I was an apprentice in a coaching firm for about a year. And that led me to a lot of powerful experiences, retraining my brain, understanding my thoughts, my emotions, law of attraction, spirituality at a new level, all these amazing, wonderful things. And I had the privilege of leading seminars and coaching clients one-on-one and guiding clients. And it was just a wonderful time of growth for me. And it was all about me, but I was also having the opportunity to help others grow. And while I was helping others grow, I was growing. And it was really a magnificent experience. And then at age 27, in March of 2015, I met my beloved girlfriend, Gail. And it was an extraordinary meeting because about 3 or 4 weeks prior to us meeting and never knowing about one another, Gail had gone to see a psychic. And not for relationship, but she'd gone to see a psychic for her business because she had been recently separated from her husband at the time and was kind of in a crossroads of what she wanted to do with her life. It was split between a couple of different options. So she went to go see this psychic to kind of decide what option or get some insight. But the psychic really didn't talk about business at all. She kept telling her that she was going to meet this 28-year-old man and what he looked like, the hair, the the jacket, the shirt, the entire look, very detailed. And Gail left that session with the psychic thinking, what the heck is this lady talking about? You know, Gail at the time was 48, maybe 47 years old. And she's thinking, you know, why am I ever going to be in a relationship with a 28-year-old man? I mean, she, you know, after her separation, it was older men, you know, certainly not younger men, you know, less than 20 years of age. So she thought, you know, just cast aside, didn't think much about it. But then 3 or 4 weeks later, we met at a meetup group, and I happened to walk in a little bit later as it was getting started. And just the way the door was positioned and the seating, everyone could see me come in. And to a T, I was dressed exactly as the psychic said. My hair was the same way. You know, as Gail will tell you, you know, the hairstyle was not good at the time, and she helped me with that. But yeah, I had this slick back hair, and it was awful. It was awful. If you look through my Facebook feed way down, you'll see it. It's a terrible look. But she pointed that out, and you know, helped me with that, along with many other wardrobe challenges that I was having. So we met, and you know, she went back to the psych and said, "Hey, you know, this is a real thing. You know, I met him. Well, what is it? You know?" And the psychic said, "The soulmate connection." They did this astrology thing, and when Gail and I kind of had our first date, which wasn't really a date because you know I was into this business at the time. I just invited her to talk about this kind of coaching, brain training business I was in. But she told me all this, and you know, and I didn't know what to make of it, but I was willing to explore it. And a couple months later, in May of 2015, we began dating, and that really began the best 5 years of my life. Gail was my guardian angel, my savior. You know, pulled me out of some. You know, it's not that I was doing anything wrong, but you know, the crowd of people that I was in, while it served me really well at the time, it was time to grow. It was time to grow beyond that into the next phase. And she helped me really get a sense of awareness, social awareness, reading people, gauging what's a good opportunity, what's not, who's a good person to be in business with, who's not. Learned so many things from her. She's highly psychic, highly intuitive, highly gifted, a healer. She went on to become a spiritual psychotherapist and help others through that modality, as well as other modalities. So just an amazing woman and the light of my life. And she continues to be as my communication continues with her. At age 31, in the fall of 2018, she was diagnosed with breast cancer. And that was kind of the first hit, like, wow, this is surreal. I mean, you know, I've heard about people having cancer, but, you know, beyond my grandma having it when I was 19, I was very naive to that. Didn't even know she had cancer, really. My grandmother at age 19. So, you know, coming here, this was really the first direct experience I had with anything like this. And it was a time of, you know, spiritual growth for both of us. And we had some times through our relationship where we thought, hey, maybe we're going to go in different directions. And something always brought us back together. And at this time, it was really the cancer that strengthened our bond, the breast cancer. You know, I was there to support her. Initially, I had a lot of emotions around it, you know, because one of her greatest challenges was with her diet and her eating. And she wanted so bad to live a healthy lifestyle that way. But for whatever reason, she just couldn't bring herself to be consistent with it. And I felt so angry initially when she had this diagnosis, because I was, blaming her for having it based on her diet. Now, of course, from this perspective now, I realize it's just part of the script. That was her role. She's explained all this to me, and that I'll be going to do quite in-depth detail around that in the course that I'm putting together. But from this perspective, I realized, hey, that's the role she was meant to play. And eventually I realized that, let all the judgments go, let all the anger go. I was really able to show up for her and just be a great boyfriend, a great fiance, just phenomenal. And it strengthened our relationship. And after she had to keep, initially she did some alternative medicine for it, but it was an extremely aggressive form of cancer, and there was a lot of fear around it. So she eventually ended up having chemotherapy, and she had a single mastectomy, and she was given clear margins, and she was told, you're cancer free. So we planned to get married after that. We discussed our future and what it would look like, and where we're going to live and all these things. And so that was an amazing time, and we had an amazing time in the summer and fall of 2019. Gail has a son, a 23-year-old son, who had was living with her, but had moved to California temporarily. And so Gail and I had some amazing, incredible experiences together in that time frame, in the latter half of 2019. And we went on a great retreat to a place up north here of Toronto that was phenomenal. It was just a great kind of way of parting, gift that we had for one another to share that time. It was incredible. And about a year later, a year and a bit later, it was in June 2019 when she had the mastectomy. So it was less than a year. It was 6 months, really. 6 months later, she started having bone pain. And initially it was misdiagnosed. It was misdiagnosed as being first sciatica, and then being a bone fracture. And then eventually, after like 2 months of tests, it was then finally diagnosed as being cancer. So she was walking around on a leg with this cancer in it for like a month before finally succumbing to the pain. It was pretty incredible. In the process we went through, and she just the pain got progressively worse and worse, and it was a really challenging time for her. But again, that spiritual growth came in, certainly for me, certainly for her in her final days. And this is a picture from about a month before that started surfacing. So this was a really happy time for us, and we were having a lot of just a lot of harmony, a lot of great conversations, a lot of great communication. So it was phenomenal, just a blessed time. And and then she ended up needing a lot of caretaking. Her son came back, was helping a lot with that. Her mother and I was helping a lot with that. Eventually she came to her mother's here. I'm currently residing with her mother-in-law as we go through this virus situation, and during the time that Gail was being caregiven. And eventually she needed to go to the hospital. And so then it accelerated. But for me, it was a great time of growth and insight, and a lot of grieving, a lot of sadness, and I worked through a lot of that stuff. And I had a lot of great support through my through the network that I built of people involved in kind of this emotional, spiritual work, and friends and family, absolutely, and the prayers from many of you in the Facebook community who have shared this, participated in the healing experiment for Gail, and just having your prayers and donations. So thank you again for that. And I came to have some great awarenesses about myself. And Gail, in her final days, when she was conscious in the hospital, she was isolated. The 2 or 3 weeks she was isolated in the hospital is probably the most time she's ever spent on her own. And she had a great opportunity to dive deep into herself and really learn about herself in a whole new way. She'd been such a social person, in a lot of ways used that as a cover-up for dealing with her deeper secret thoughts and emotions. And she finally had no choice but to face it all. And as a result, she really had a clean slate leaving, which is amazing. And, she just did such a great job in this life, raised an amazing young man named Mitchell. And she was an amazing partner for me. And she actually raised her nephew from age 15 to around something like age 20. He had a lot of conflicts with his family and ended up moving in with Gail. This is in the early days, long before I knew her. And she raised him. And he's, well into his 30s or even 40s now. But he he went on to be very successful in business. And Gail, and it's, he made the choices, but Gail played a pivotal role in guiding him. So she was just been an amazing guide for many people in her therapy, with her friends, and she had such an incredible impact on my life, and she continues to, and she's even with me as I speak. So it never ends. And that's, the final step here is hearing her in spirit, and her coming to me, the morning before she passed, giving me the messages, which, are in that other video. But essentially, she, my computer turned on, it was playing a video at like 5 a.m. The video stopped. Suddenly I got this download of inspiration for a letter to share with her mom from Gail, just with words of comfort and guidance for her mother to take. In terms of her health, even there were specific health outlines, what she can do to better her health and her mindset. It was phenomenal. And then Gail went on to tell me that she wants to work through me in terms of she accumulated a tremendous amount of medical and nutritional knowledge through her life. Just had a really challenging time implementing it herself, but she had the knowledge and some great healing abilities to help others heal, and even physically. And, all inspired through source power, all channeled through God. And she was incredibly spiritually connected, but she kept a lot of that private in some ways. But in some ways, she was very open with it, and she had some wonderful groups of friends to share it with. And she definitely had a lot going on within herself when it came to the spiritual world. So she came with a message, and I, wrote that to her mom. And, it was a letter. It was like 6 a.m. She gave it to me. And I got the hint, like, hey, you got to write this now while it's fresh in your mind. I said, no, I'll write it in a few hours when I get up. She said, no, man. I had this pressure in my left ear. My body got all warm. I was way too uncomfortable to keep sleeping. So it just kicked me out of bed. I wrote the letter. Her mom loved it. I've further had some messages for her son, other close family, even her dad, who's not, as I understand, not that spiritual, but he was really impacted by it, and others have been. And it's incredible. It's such a feeling of incredible joy to give this gift. It doesn't feel like work in any capacity. So my mission now is really to share this spiritual connection, giving a voice to spirit. And, Gail's working through me as well as developing my ability to connect with, other people that have passed in my life, and even, the idea of spirit guides. The whole spiritual realm is a whole world that's available to us for guidance and success in this world, and for our growth. And thanks to Gail's decision to have this experience and to go through the cancer and to transition out of this physical life, I'm catapulted into a whole new realm of, my own awareness, but also the ability to share. And that's my work. That's my mission. It's so clear and distinct to me now. So that's where it comes to this invitation, this course, Spirituality for Beginners. And it's really, that's just who it's for, people who are beginning their spiritual journey. But what does that really mean? And why is it called Spirituality for Beginners? Because the idea of being a beginner, the most advanced spiritual practitioner is a beginner. Having a beginner's mind, having an empty cup, being an empty vessel to receive these messages from spirit, we can't be thinking. We always have to have that empty mind. And that's really what this course is all about, is identifying with spirit and choosing that higher part of yourself, rather than choosing the limited part of yourself. And that serves a purpose too. We're not casting the body aside. We're not denying the ego in the sense that, it's a bad, evil thing. It's not. It serves a purpose in our growth. We chose this life. But when we can see that from a greater vantage point, you become a beginner. You have an empty mind. You have a quiet mind. You're at peace. And that's the basis for this. And I'm going to just go off screen here for a second. So, okay, perfect. Perfect. Okay, here we go. So the course objective of this Spirituality for Beginners is, and yes, Reverend Matthew D. Gardner, that is me. I am a reverend under the Universal Life Church based in California, and that me getting signified as a reverend, ordained as a reverend, that happened just through synchronicity. I had no intentions of it, but just through another course that I did several years ago. I'm actually right around the first time I met Gail, so 5 years ago or so. I was given this ordained as a reverend as part of the training that I was going through. And it's fitting. I mean, I've certainly been on the spiritual path and sharing this type of knowledge for a long time. And, this is a whole new depth for me. And I think I certainly know with certainty that it's valuable to those that have ears to hear, those that are ready for the next opportunity to grow in their life spiritually and in every area of life, because our whole life is spiritual. Spirituality isn't one area of life. Spirituality is life, and all the other facets of life fit into that spiritual awareness, from my perspective. So the course objective of Spirituality for Beginners is helping men and women who feel bogged down with the weight of life to have happiness with no sorrow. And one of my mentors, Lester Levinson, discovered a process in 1952 when he was diagnosed with an extreme illness, told he only had 2 weeks to live, was determined not to die, was determined to go on living, and he decided to look within himself and discover how to continue life. And he realized that life was best for him when he was happiest. And at first he thought he was happiest when people were loving him, but then he realized that he's actually most happy when he's loving others. And so he discovered a process through his own experience, healed his body within 3 months, became a millionaire within 6 months, and discovered a process to live with permanent happiness, having no sorrow, no ups and downs. Of course, it's a journey to get there, but it may not be as long as you think. And I've certainly experienced this. I've certainly experienced sorrow, sadness, grieving on my process of life, as well as on my process with Gail and her journey through cancer. But I have to tell you, I'm on the other side of this with a lot of peace. And it's less than 2 weeks ago when she passed. And it's my gift to share this knowledge and her insights, her channeling through me, to share that with others, and everything I've learned, everything she's taught me, everything I've learned in my 10 plus years on this spiritual journey. So that's what this course is all about. So this is the basic outline. It's going to be 4 modules. Module 1, 10 spiritual characteristics and traits. Now, this just won't be information. This will be absolutely active. You will be participating. You will be taking these concepts and embodying them into your cellular structure, embodying them into your heart, into your being, quieting your mind and allowing yourself to fully embrace each of these characteristics and traits to become the person that's already available to you. It already exists, but it's kind of like having a piece of granite, and you're just going to chip away the parts of the granite that don't belong there anymore, and you're going to reveal this magnificent sculpture, which is you, which is your life. That's what this course is all about, and that's what Module 1 paints the foundation for. Module 2 is following the voice of spirit. How do you know when you're tapped in, turned on, tuned in, listening to that voice? How do you feel it? How do you recognize it? How do you follow it? How do you implement it? How do you make it practical? That's what we're going to be discussing in Module 2. Again, you're going to be implementing this into your life. You're going to be hearing some information, but almost instantaneously, you're going to be embodying it into your behavior, into your thinking, into your emotions. Module 3, letting go of your baggage. How do you let go of all that negativity, all those heavier emotions, so that you can truly be you, so that you can feel lighter and happier and freer every moment of every day. That's our divine right. We have the option. It's just like tuning into a radio frequency. It's there for us, but you have to know the right frequency, the right dial. You have to have the right recipe, the right ingredients. And it's most easy to learn from someone who's done it. You know, I learned it from Lester Levinson, and one of his students, Larry Crane, and many other masters in this realm. You know, and I've certainly reached a degree of efficiency with it, a degree of mastership with it, where it's my privilege to share and serve and teach and help others grow, because as I help others grow, I grow. You know, in some ways it's self-serving to teach, because yeah, I'm helping you, but as I help you, it helps me. But I'm on the spiritual journey. I'm climbing the spiritual ladder just like you. And I fully intend, for those of you that understand what I'm saying, this is my final life in a human body. Why? Because enlightenment is possible. It's here now, it's possible. And for those of you wishing to break your karmic cycle and let go of your negativity and be totally free and have total forgiveness and appreciation and approval for everything that exists, this is the path. Module 4, health and well-being for spiritual practice. We have bodies. We have to breathe, drink, eat. You know, how do we do those things in the most efficient, peaceful, fun, exciting way? We'll be talking about that. We'll be covering that. You'll know how to approach it. You'll have a wonderful foundation for that. And if you already have a great foundation for that, you can build upon it. So, what am I launching here? This is the beta group. This is a beta group. So, this is going to be a standalone, follow it yourself course once it's recorded. And it's going to be available for $97 US once it's completed. However, this beta group, I really want to get it off on the right foot. I want to get the best feedback. I want to get great case studies. I want to really help people. So this beta group is priced at $47 US. And that's going to include the 4 modules. That's going to be 4 separate sessions, approximately an hour and a half each. There's going to be questions and answers at each session. There's going to be exercises. And it's also going to include at least 1 bonus session at the end of that. So there's going to be a total of at least 5 sessions, probably more, just for ongoing support. And there's going to be unlimited email support during this. So if you have questions, you email me. I often respond with voice messaging or with a video. So you'll be fully empowered to make this transition, to go along this spiritual journey and really define that idea of oneness. What is oneness? How do I be in beingness? You know, and for those of you unfamiliar with these terms, it's just about being your whole self, being your most authentic self, being your most loving and compassionate and amazing self, your most successful self. Is business success possible with this? Absolutely. Lester became a millionaire within 6 months of starting this process. He went on to train and teach people who went on to become very successful in their business and financially. Larry Crane was very successful, one of his students who I've been learning from. So it's a great opportunity to take not only your spiritual awareness to the next level, not only imbue a permanent state of happiness in your life, but also have the financial success and the health success and the relationship success that you've always wanted. A few testimonials here that from people that I've worked with in the past. Mike C., chiropractor. Through Matthew's support, I was able to attract a great tenant to my wellness center, resulting in an additional $500 a month in revenue. Working with him helped me to realize more than ever before the level of abundance and opportunities that are available to me. This happens when we open our awareness, when we let go of the blocks and become who we truly are. Doors open. They were always there, but we didn't know they were there. We had them closed, but then we opened them. New opportunities come. Gene J., corporate trainer, he says, with Matthew's support, I'm now happier than I've ever been. I've been able to dial in my focus to perform at my best while working in an industry that I am extraordinarily passionate about. My greatest takeaway from working with Matthew was unlocking my ability to shift my perception from feeling stressed to being happy with my own free will despite the circumstances around me. That is the pure definition of happiness without sorrow. Lester called it being imperturbable, meaning you're not affected by the world around you. Your state of happiness and peace doesn't come from the amount of money in your bank account or what's happening in your relationship or what's happening in your business. Those things are all going to be great. They're all going to grow and grow and grow. It's called, Course in Miracles calls it entering the happy dream. What it really means by that, though, is not so much the material world changing, although it certainly will. But what it really means is your state of mind is changing. When your state of mind changes, suddenly your signal's different, your frequency's different, and the life around you changes because it's your movie, it's your projection, it's going to change. You know, the circumstances aren't what matter, it's your state of mind that materializes the matter in your life. The matter meaning the physical matter, your environment is created with your mind. But don't just take that as a concept, right? We're going to be diving into that. How do you actually access that? How do you actually access those levers and dials of your subconscious to start transforming your life, right? It's by letting go of the baggage. It's very simple. It's very straightforward. And really, you know, the kind of seed to plant here is it's really about just having approval and appreciation for everything in your life. But there's a process to get to that. Because again, if you just intellectualize it, you'll frustrate yourself. I've been through that many times. You have to understand, how do I actually have approval for things? Well, you got to stop beating yourself up, first and foremost, with your thoughts. Or stop beating up others with your thoughts, projecting onto them your judgments. You got to stop that. How do you let that go? Can you let that go? Are you willing to let that go? And when will you let that go? That's Lester's method, deciding to let it go immediately now. And then as you do that, then you realize, okay, maybe I can stop disapproving. Can I allow myself to stop disapproving of myself or of others or of situations? Yes. Then now that the garbage is clear, you've looked at the garbage, or at least enough of the garbage, we've cleared a little space, now you can bring in approval. Because if you go straight to approval and you've got a lot of garbage there, that's like putting icing on a pile of crap. You know, it might look good temporarily, but, you know, eventually the smell's going to get back. You're going to smell it again. So we don't want that. We want permanent happiness, not surface level. Andrew M., consultant, he says, with Matthew's guidance, I was able to leave my previous firm and take 100% ownership of my business. I was also able to pay for my wife to go to school and fulfill her goal to become a licensed massage therapist, as well as buy myself a new Mercedes. To date, I have more than doubled my income since first working with Matthew. Business success. Right? It's here, it's now, it's possible, it's part of the journey. Our success in business, our success with finances, our success in our relationships, our success with health, it's all part of the spiritual journey. It's not separate. The spiritual journey is the life, and everything that happens in the life contributes to that spiritual journey. You'll be understanding that in a deeper and deeper way as we go through this course. And is this course just for people if you've never had exposure to spirituality? Oh, it certainly is for them, but it's not only for them. Oh, if you've been on your spiritual journey for years and maybe you've had your struggles, maybe you're feeling stuck, maybe you've had some success, but you're ready for the next level. As a group, we can do that. We can take it to the next level. As we serve others, we serve ourselves. And that's really what this is all about. It's for the initiated as well as the uninitiated. Final case study testimonial here from Dylan G., student, high school student, who I had the privilege of assisting. He says, Matthew's coaching has been a very unique and important experience for me. Before working with Matthew, I had struggled with my emotions, had a lack of clear direction, and experienced some strains in my social life. Through Matthew's guidance and mentoring, I was able to learn how to control my emotional states, balance my social life with school, and experience how easy it is for me to have success just being myself. I now have more confidence and clarity about my life than ever before, and I feel very excited about my future. Amazing, amazing. Just by letting go of the baggage, by understanding yourself in a deeper and deeper way, your life, things might not even look different, but you're just going to feel different about them. And will they change? Absolutely. Absolutely they'll change. Goals are a huge component of this. Lester emphasizes having goals. Why? Because it stirs up all your crap. It stirs up all that negativity. It stirs up all your heavy emotions, all your doubts, your disbeliefs. All your self-sabotage comes up the moment you set a goal. But then you have the opportunity to clear it out. It's not about the goal. It's about clearing up the garbage. When you clear out the garbage, suddenly the goal becomes yours. It's pretty amazing. So, starting Saturday, May 9th at 4 p.m. Eastern Time for approximately an hour and a half, that first session, we'll be starting Module 1. Each module will be proceeded with a question and answer period. There will also be ongoing exercises through each module. We'll be joining together on Zoom. And like I said, it's going to include at least one bonus session, probably more. And you'll have unlimited email support to me throughout each session and throughout the entire program, which is going to last approximately about a week or so, maybe a week and a half. Plus, with the bonus sessions, it's probably going to last up to 2 weeks, maybe even up to a month of support. So I highly encourage you, if this at all resonates with you, to jump on this opportunity. It's going to be incredible. I am going to love every moment of sharing every gift that I've been given throughout the last 10 plus years of my life, really my whole life. And everything that's been consolidated into this program is going to be your gift to take your spiritual awareness, your frequency, your life, your quality of life to the next level. So how do you apply? The link should be in the description of this post. You can also go here, facebook.com/groups/spirituality for beginners. It's the number 4, numerical 4. And that's how you can apply. Once you're in the group, you'll see how you can enroll in the program. There'll be about 3 questions for you to ask, that you'll be asked upon enrolling in the group or requesting to join the group. And you just answer those questions. And then once you're in, you can directly contact me. The information's there to enroll. Also, upon joining the group, that would be the easiest way. I'll also be reaching out to everyone who joins the group to invite you and to welcome you into the group. And I look forward to seeing you there. It's going to be an incredible experience. It is truly a privilege for me to be able to share this knowledge. It is coming from a higher place. Do I have a lot of knowledge already, a lot of experience? Yes, but it's an interesting process. I've been really putting a lot of that aside and just receiving the knowledge that's there. I'm not listening to the past knowledge that I've accumulated. I'm listening to the new present knowledge that's boom, it's there. It's profound. It's incredible. You will grow. You will prosper. You'll have an amazing time. It's my commitment. So join us. I look forward to reading your comments, questions. I look forward to guiding you, mentoring you, nurturing you on this journey of spiritual growth. I look forward to us all collectively helping one another and serving one another and growing collectively as a community. Thank you for watching, and I will see you soon.